Good afternoon, and thanks everyone for joining today's investor presentation and live Q&A session with the executive management teams for both Canoe and Hennessy Capital Acquisition Corp. 4. Presenting today will be Dan Hennessy, who is the chairman and CEO of the eponymously named Hennessy Capital 4, along with Greg Etheridge, who is Hennessy 4's president and chief operating officer. Additionally, from the Canoe team, we have Uli Kranz, who is in charge of Canoe, and he will be joined by Paul Balchunas, who is in charge of finance and corporate development. Finally, Alex Marcinkowski, who is in charge of corporate strategy, will be presenting as well. To start, the teams will be giving a presentation overview of Canoe and the intended combination, which will be followed by a live Q&A session. Participants can submit questions via the Q&A icon found by hovering your mouse at the bottom of your screen. And with that being said, I'd like to turn it over now to Dan Hennessy to begin the presentation.
Great, thank you, Christy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Hennessy, Chairman and CEO of Hennessy Capital Acquisition Corp. 4, and I'm really pleased to be with you today to discuss our merger with Canoe, the creator of the next generation of affordable, clean electric vehicles for urban environments, and accompanied by the convenience of a hassle-free consumer subscription. I'd especially like to thank Christy Marvin and SPAC Insider for organizing this event. The interior photo slide shown here portrays exactly what I experienced when I sat in the front seat of the company's first commercial offering, the Canoe lifestyle vehicle. I'm 6 feet 4 inches tall. I was totally comfortable and impressed by the clean lines, capacious and inviting interior, replete with glass and light, truly a loft on wheels. My Android phone was all that was required to control and personalize my experience. No distracting screens or complicated infotainment system to navigate. And the steer-by-wire driving experience was smooth and responsive. In fact, Jay Leno came by recently to tour Canoe and test drive the vehicle for his show, Jay Leno's Garage. I highly recommend you watch the full episode, which can be found on the company's website in the press section. Next, we have an executive summary of our merger agreement with Canoe at a pro forma enterprise value of approximately $1.8 billion. Existing Canoe shareholders and management will continue to own about 72% of the new NASDAQ-listed Canoe, which will trade under the ticker CNOO, including over $300 million raised through the equity pipe and approximate $300 million of HCAC4 cash in trust. We expect to deliver about $600 million of cash proceeds to the company at the time of the business combination in Q4 of this year, which will fully fund the company through the start of production of the lifestyle vehicle and allow for advancing the development of the Canoe delivery vehicle. In the way of background, the Hennessy Capital team has reviewed approximately 190 potential targets for HCAC4 since our IPO in March of 2019. Since late last year, we have been exclusively focused on industrial technology. And in fact, along with our industry advisors, we have had the opportunity to perform an in-depth analysis of 15 different EV and advanced mobility companies. Based upon our assessments and this team's proven track record of accomplishment, we can state unequivocally that Canoe is closer to commercial success than any other company we evaluated. Next, we show summary investment highlights. You will learn and hear more from the Canoe team on the proprietary vehicle agnostic modular skateboard chassis, the multifaceted B2C and B2B product strategy I just referenced, the unique and resilient Canoe subscription model, which elongates the revenue generation horizon and significantly increases ROE per vehicle, the asset lean outsourced manufacturing and production plan, culminating with what we believe is a highly attractive entry valuation for investors. Thank you, and now over to you, Uli.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Let me start to give you a quick overview about Canoe. The company has been founded at the beginning of 2018, and our headquarters is located in Los Angeles. We have today about 300 employees in the company, and we have them all in one building that includes the office space as well as the testing equipment and our laboratory, as well as the vehicle build-up. So everything is under one roof, and with a very experienced team, we were really able to bring our first prototype fleet to the market within only 19 months. On the right side, you see what we already achieved or what we developed. So we have a proprietary EV skateboard technology architecture that allows us to introduce a wide range of vehicles in a very efficient way in a short time. With a very experienced team on site, we were able really to accomplish that in a record time. On slide 8, I'd like to give you a bit an overview about our achievements. Right from the start, we wanted to really achieve these 5 top priorities. Number 1, we wanted really to demonstrate that this team is able to design, develop, and manufacture prototypes in a very short way and in a very efficient way. And today we have already 32 vehicles produced, and we already performed more than 50 physical crash tests. So this is something what we wanted to achieve right from the start, and we are really happy that we have these results, and they are correlating very well with our simulation. The second point we wanted to achieve is right from the start, we wanted to make sure that we have cost in mind for each single component, because we are going to introduce vehicles that are positioned in the mid segment of the passenger car, so they should be reasonably priced. And with our results we have today, we are pretty close to achieve our internal target when it comes to the bill of material, of the cost. And this will, of course, translate into lower costs for our consumers. The third point we had in mind right from the beginning, we wanted to develop a highly modular platform or a skateboard chassis that allows us to introduce different vehicles, different top hats, using exactly the same skateboard in a very efficient way and bringing it fast to market. So this is something we achieved as well already today. Point 4, space efficiency. So this is something you will see throughout the presentation. Our target was to introduce a vehicle for the urban environment, for the mega cities, that fulfills the need of the customers for space, but on a relatively small footprint to make it easier to maneuver the car and to have a more efficient product on the road. So this is something we achieved. We are having the biggest interior space available on a comparable small footprint. One can imagine it, our first product has an interior space of a large SUV sitting on a footprint of a compact car. Point 5, manufacturability was in our mind right from the start. We wanted to have an experienced contract manufacturer on site that knows how to produce vehicles in good quality at high volume. And we could convince a manufacturing partner from the beginning to help our engineers to engineer every component, subsystem, or system in a way that it is ready to be manufactured. So these are 5 of the key elements we wanted to achieve right from the beginning, and we are there already today. On slide 9, I'd like to show you our revenue streams. This is also something I would consider unique for a startup. We have 3 different revenue streams that we want to use to make our company profitable. The first one is engineering services. This is a revenue stream we already have today. We make money with engineering services, and we do that already today for OEMs, for instance, for a company like Hyundai. The second revenue stream is for our consumer vehicle. What you see there, this is our lifestyle vehicle that will be introduced by 2022. This will be available for subscription only. And we have a third revenue stream, This is a commercial vehicle, a last mile delivery electric vehicle. This will be introduced a year after our first car is on the market, and this is a B2B product. This vehicle will be available for sales. So there you can see we can tap into 3 different business models, and this gives us also a huge benefit and a huge flexibility when it comes to revenue, generating revenue. On slide 10, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Paul, and he will give you some more information about our consumer vehicle and our delivery vehicle.
Great. Thank you, Uli. As you heard earlier, space is one of the key themes that you'll hear throughout this presentation. And this is our first product to the consumer market, what we call the lifestyle vehicle. Space is one of the top factors that consumers consider in selecting a vehicle. And we know this just based off of the history of the vehicles that have been out there on the road. In the 1960s and the 1970s, we saw a lot of station wagons that had a lot of space. And then we transitioned into minivans in the 80s and the 90s. And then today, what we see on the road are a lot of SUVs. And consumers, they really want a space for their entire lifestyles, even though they're in the car by themselves a large majority of the time. If you look at the images on the left, these are all to scale from a bumper-to-bumper length perspective. And you can see that our vehicle is significantly shorter than a Honda Odyssey. It's also shorter than a Tesla Model 3, and it's about the same size as a VW Golf. Now, the best way to experience our vehicle is to come to our facilities and sit in it. But short of being able to do that, the illustration that I would give you is, imagine trying to squeeze 7 adults into a VW Golf or a Model 3. It physically would not be possible. But that's what you can do with our vehicle. It's capable of carrying up to 7 passengers. However, it's on a very, very small footprint. So when you look at the bottom half of the page, from volume per length of foot, we are by far best in class in terms of the comparables. Moving to slide 11. This is an overview of our B2B product, the last mile delivery vehicle. E-commerce has continued to grow over the years, and it's expected to reach over $1 trillion by 2022. But consumer behavior has changed over time. Traditionally, we were fine waiting 5 days to receive a package, and that time has now come down to 3 days to 2. And we're seeing more and more packages being delivered within 1 day or within hours. And we think that the products that the logistic players have today is not a great solution for this last mile delivery part of the marketplace. Those vehicles are very large and are designed to carry a lot of cargo and make multiple stops around a single route. This vehicle is designed specifically for those short, quick sprints from fulfillment centers within urban city centers. And it's perfectly suited for that marketplace, just given the size of the vehicle on the outside. Again, it's very small from a footprint perspective, but it also has massive space inside for cargo and goods. This vehicle can also be configured into 3 different sizes, as you can see in the image on the bottom left. And this is important based off of requirements for different marketplaces around the world. This vehicle will be the vehicle that is sold directly to businesses versus the consumer product, which is part of our subscription model, which Alex will touch on here on the next slide.
Thanks, Paul. Going to slide 12, we can take a look at our go-to-market strategy, which is our subscription model. And because new models typically require at least some contextualization, I want to start by explaining what exactly is a vehicle subscription. And sometimes, especially with new models, it's just easiest to level set and say what a subscription is not. So it's not a car swapping or a zip car model, and we aren't a ride sharing company. Really, at its core, subscription is just a readaptation of a lease. We removed what people really didn't like, which is a minus column, namely the 2 to 3 year time commitment and the significant down payment. And then we added elements that either made sense from a consumer experience perspective or where we as Canoe could leverage economies of scale and achieve some cost efficiencies. And the 5 of these being that you see on the slide is inclusion of routine maintenance and repair, a bumper-to-bumper warranty. So our goal is that you really don't have to worry about any car-related issues in the subscription. We include the registration and renewal costs with the DMV. We streamline the insurance process by including collision insurance. And finally, we include access to the networks of the largest public charging providers, all within our Canoe app. And the end result of all these decisions is really the subscription model, which we believe is outright superior to a lease because it reduces a lot of the friction and inefficiency seen in that model. And then it delivers a simple and honest experience for our members. But before hopping to the next slide, I want to take a step back and also say why we went this route. Because as a young company, we have an opportunity to approach automotive models without the burden of legacy. And this is really important. So we looked at what model we wanted to launch really from a macroeconomic standpoint and long-term consumer trends. Essentially, what is the market telling us? And we noticed key two macro trends that were really compelling to us. The first of which was that we saw people were leasing vehicles more and more. It's becoming more popular than an outright purchase, especially in the plus $30,000 segment. And the second trend we noticed was, a more cultural shift towards flexible or non-committal services. And this isn't only true in automotive, real estate, tech, telecom. You're seeing it everywhere. People are buying things outright less. Geographically, we're all moving around a lot more. And this is leading to a more expense-heavy lifestyle with less fixed asset purchases. So for us at Canoe, it makes a lot of sense to capture these macro tailwinds, all of which are over-indexed in large cities where we're launching with consumers who are our target demographic and are going to be more prevalent 2+ years out when we launch. And this is why we went with the subscription model. Going to slide 13, we want to look at how this functions from a user experience perspective. And the process, as you can see, it's purposely simple. It's genuinely 5 steps from end to end, assuming you would actually want to cancel your subscription. And frankly, it's not worth me reading off the slide, and that's really the point. We genuinely want this process to be this simple. For a consumer, there's only one partner needed. I don't need to go to geico.com. I don't need to go to the DMV or the repair shop. If I'm a consumer, it's just go to Canoe. And this is really important because achieving this level of consumer-facing simplicity is quite difficult on our end. And we've engaged like a robust partner network to support this. But I'll say it again, that we as a young company are uniquely positioned to address and launch models like this. And more importantly, it's what consumers are asking for today. So with that, I'll hand it back off to Paul to talk through our financials.
Thanks, Alex. If we can go to the next slide. Before I jump into some of these figures, there's 2 key points that I would like to make. The first is we wanted to assume a very realistic ramp up in terms of volume production. It is very difficult to produce a vehicle, and it's very difficult to produce a vehicle at high quality. And as you heard Uli described earlier, working with a contract manufacturing partner is critically important, but also making sure that we do this correctly with the conservative ramp up in the first year. The second point I'd like to make is this model is built without layering in heavy government subsidies. We don't know how long those subsidies will be available. We wanted to make sure that this model was sustainable based off of the unit economics of the subscription model and direct sales of our last mile delivery vehicle. So our first product to market will be in 2022. It's our lifestyle consumer vehicle. This is part of the subscription business, and we ramp up our volumes over the coming years. And this is really what's driving the revenue growth that you see below the volumes. We have strong growth, and we're looking to achieve approximately $4 billion in sales by 2026 as we continue to bring new products to market and ramp up our overall volume production. We do have a clear path to profitability. If you look down at EBITDA and EBIT, we do break even in approximately 2024, in the first part of that year. And what's great about this business model is the power of this subscription model. If you look at the EBITDA margins of approximately 20%, this is our target run rate, and this is a fully burdened figure that incorporates all of the depreciation of our fleet since we own it, and it also accounts for all of the accruals as part of our subscription model. In comparison to a traditional automotive model, you're looking at an operating profit margin somewhere between 5 to 10%. So this is able to generate the cash, which then also makes it a highly efficient model in terms of not requiring us to raise significant capital every year in terms of this to be able to be functional. From an operating capital expenditure, primarily focused on supplier tooling as one of the main line items. And you can see that it does decline significantly after we produce our first vehicles. And this will only increase if we decide to bring additional vehicles to the marketplace. So with that, I will turn it back to Christy.
Thanks, Paul. So now we're going to begin the Q&A part of this presentation. So you can submit your questions again by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the page, and we will be happy to answer them.
So let's look, while several have queued up, and we can get started here. So maybe to get started, to Uli and the team, one question, general question. Well, you know, there's been a number of EV companies that have come to market. Can you comment? I know that it's a pretty high level question, but can you comment on what makes Canoe unique relative to some of the other recent offerings that have been out?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and Paul and Alex, you can join. So first of all, we have developed a unique architecture and a unique product, a unique design of the vehicle that takes really full advantage of an electric powertrain. And we are already on the road with our vehicles today. So as I mentioned, within 19 months, we developed, designed, and manufactured 32 vehicles. 13 of them are full runners, and they are on the road as of last year already, and they are delivering test results today. And the other thing is we are performing physical tests when it comes to crash performance. We want to achieve an overall target of 5 stars. And the results that we have already in our computers are looking pretty good, and they are correlating very well with the simulation we did. So we are a company that is established. We have cars on the road, and of course, as I mentioned, we make already revenue today with providing services to companies like Hyundai.
Great. Paul, did you have anything to add there, or should we go to the next question?
Nope, I think we covered it. Next.
There are a couple questions on the subscription model, and one of them is, you know, love the subscription model. I would love to get a sense of the monthly price, and maybe with that we can add in, and I assume these are going to go to you, Alex, but can you also compare and contrast, you know, relative to kind of the competition in the market, and how you might think about the subscription price relative to, you know, other leases or comparable products?
Yep, it's a good question. So the first thing I would say is that no, our goal is actually to be price equivalent on an apples to apples basis with a traditional lease. So once you adjust for the down payment, registration costs, and maintenance, we will be able to match your typical i3 or Model 3 lease pricing 1-for-1. And there are a few reasons that we're able to do this. You know, I think it's obvious that we're providing significant customer benefit with the inclusion and the optionality in the model. But if we look at leasing, the reality is lease pricing is actually pretty inefficient. Just because it's an industry standard doesn't actually mean it's the best way to do it. And you're going through a dealer network, you have cars sitting on lots for 6+ months, lots of models and trims. All these things eventually get passed on to the consumer. But really the primary issue with lease pricing, and where we are able to make up the delta for the optionality in our model, is that the main component of your monthly lease price is actually depreciation, like 75 to 80% typically. Because you need to plan on the resale value, every single lease today is getting billed at a double decline in depreciation. But because in a resale, the consumer is assuming the warranty risk, the maintenance and repair costs, the estimated useful life, the lease customer is paying for factors that are relevant for them. So for Canoe, with no resale value, we properly depreciate the asset over the useful life and then pass along those savings to the consumer. And then the final element I'd like to bring up is that by us including things like MRO, registration, we leverage economies of scale that you typically would have to pay for, you know, individually as a consumer. And we can help bring that price gap down, and essentially we will be price equivalent to a lease is the short answer, while delivering a lot more customer value.
Okay, thanks. Right, and specifically, your opening there is that you don't expect it to be more expensive. You expect it to be equivalent or better than the competition. I think I just want to make sure that was clear.
It will be absolutely 1-for-1 equivalent to a lease comparator. Okay. But again, it's also important to know that we deliver a lot more value in our model than a traditional lease does.
Right. Okay, perfect. I think there was a question on the skateboard, and I'm just scrolling through this list. The kind of the patents pending on the skateboard and the platform and how that differs from the VW platform. Uli, maybe you can kind of give a little color around that question.
Yeah, first of all, the skateboard design is different from everything that is out there today, because every component is fully integrated into that low profile skateboard. The skateboard does not need a cabin to be attached to it to make it functional. So one can imagine, one can put a chair on the skateboard and having a game controller in your hand, you can drive away with it because everything is integrated into that flat architecture. And the whole architecture, how we arrange the components in the skateboard is also patented. So this is our IP. And this includes the motor, the powertrain, the battery. Our battery modules are directly attached to the skateboard. So the skateboard also acts as a battery enclosure. Our leaf spring arrangement, so we have composite leaf springs in the front and in the rear that eliminates all the parts that usually stick out, and steer by wire. No mechanical connection between the steering wheel and the wheels on the road. So this is a big differentiator from what you see on the modular platform at VW. And the complete package and the complete architecture of the skateboard is, how should I say, is in total our IP. And I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. Another question around the B2B delivery vehicle. Comments, looks compelling, has huge potential, maybe places Canoe in direct competition with Rivian and Arrival in the commercial delivery vehicle segment. So one, can you comment on that? And then secondly, Canoe, when will Canoe be ready to present the prototype B2B vehicle?
Yeah, let me talk a bit about the last mile delivery vehicle. It is not a competitor to Arrival or Rivian. Rivian, they are, as far as we know, they're offering a bigger delivery vehicle. So this is a vehicle in the segment of payload that is around 3 tons, 3.5 tons. And this is a complete different vehicle segment. This vehicle segment, for instance, does not require any crash performance. And in our case, we have a smaller vehicle that is legally required to perform crash tests. And the good thing is that our skateboard is already designed in a way fulfilling a 5-star overall crash test rating. We are already prepared to introduce a last mile delivery vehicle that fulfills all the regulatory needs. And this is different from all the other companies that are out there. The other thing is this market for a smaller delivery vehicle is quite huge, as Paul explained, and more governments are really asking to have smaller, faster delivery services or vehicles available at 0 emission. And this is where our skateboard and our last mile delivery comes into place. And we are offering a pretty big payload, about 1,000 kilograms on a relatively small footprint. And as Paul showed you, with a huge cargo space. That makes our architecture and our skateboard ideal to be used for the urban environment. And when it comes to having a prototype on the road to show to the public, it will be around November this year.
I would also add that our delivery vehicle from a cost perspective is significantly lower than the other 2 competitors that you mentioned there, just because it's a very different size and it's going after a very different part of the market. In addition to what you heard Uli describe earlier about our skateboard technology, because of the functional integration, we've reduced a lot of weight and mass and cost from our technology so that we can be very competitive in that last mile delivery vehicle market segment.
Great, thank you. Another series of questions around autonomous and future-proofing the lifestyle vehicle. Uli, can you comment on that, the concept and kind of how you're designing the ability to evolve with autonomous driving down the road?
No problem. When it comes to autonomous driving, when we launch our lifestyle vehicle, we consider the level 2.5. So we have some additional features that separates us from a level 2. Our vehicle is prepared to integrate during the lifetime of the vehicle the additional sensors, for instance, LiDAR sensors, if they are affordable to us, and the whole vehicle package has already space and package space foreseen to add additional sensors. When it comes to the computing power, our ECUs have been designed in-house as well. That goes with the software, and the processor speed and the processor power is already at a level to easily adopt a level 3 or a level 4 autonomous features and autonomous hardware. So the preparation of all of our electric architecture is already done when we launch the vehicle to introduce different levels of autonomy. If there are sensors affordable, we will immediately introduce them and implement them into the vehicle.
Thank you. Thank you. Just shifting gears, a number of questions around the Hyundai-Kia deal. Can you comment on how that relationship was developed and where it stands?
Paul, can you take this one?
Sure. So the Hyundai announcement and partnership is something that we were really proud of. And it's important for us, again, just to validate our technology and what we're doing. And as we look at the competitive landscape out there, I think it's important to note that we have a lot of these OEMs coming to Canoe for our technology, as opposed to the inverse, which you see these EV companies having to go to the OEMs to buy the technology. From that partnership perspective, it's broken into multiple phases. And the initial phase, phase 1, is concept engineering work, which essentially means using our existing technology today, but we make minor modifications to it to meet the specifications of Hyundai. As we continue to move forward in the relationship, we would be going into greater levels of detail in terms of our skateboard technology and doing some of that engineering work, possibly even producing hardware that we can use for real world testing in terms of aerodynamics as an example. And this is a typical path that we've seen with partnerships in this space, where you do a lot of the work first here up front in order to understand the technology, see how it can solve a potential or be a potential solution for other OEMs, and then you move forward into potentially longer term commercial agreements.
And a quick follow-up on that, Paul, are there any other OEM deals that that we can disclose or in development that you can comment on?
So we have a total of 7 projects in our overall pipeline for contract engineering work. I can't disclose specific names on some of those projects. However, I can say that we are projecting revenues of about 120 million for next year from contract engineering services. And this is related to 2 strategics that we are currently in the advanced stages of negotiations and discussions with today. So there certainly will be a lot more coming from this of the company. It's a critical component of our overall strategy to de-risk our strategy as a whole by bringing revenues forward as early as we can and doing some of these contract engineering work.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Another couple questions on the subscription model. So I think that there are 1 or 2 questions around the life of the vehicle and how what will happen with older canoes that are 10 plus years old? How do you think about pricing of those? And then also what are some of the things that are built into your overall pricing of the subscription service, and how do you think those changing over time? I know that was a lot, Alex, but probably your area to cover.
Yeah, no, they're all
Yeah.
good questions. I think the first one that I'll touch on, and apologies if I missed some, so I might have to follow up with you, Greg. On the vehicle life, what we're targeting right now is a 12-year life in our subscription program, which roughly equates to the average age of a vehicle on the road today in the US, which is 11 and a half years old. What we've done to ensure that the vehicles are not only going to be used in the latter half of their life, but also command, let's call it a still strong in-market pricing, is for every single one of our vehicles, we budgeted over $7,000 over the vehicle life for maintenance, repair, and refresh. So every single Canoo vehicle 2 times in its life will receive what we call like a comprehensive life cycle refresh. And this touches on what Uli was talking about earlier, receiving a completely new ADAS feature set, a new interior, new front and rear fascias if they're needed. So a 2022 model year Canoo will look and feel the same as a 2024 model. And this is really more similar. I mean, think about the airline industry today, where you get on a Boeing 737, you don't ask if it's a 10-year-old plane. You say, have the seats been updated, and do I have a nice infotainment center for my experience? And you're seeing also Tesla adopt a model similar to this, where their Model S, their first one in 2012, looks almost exactly the same as their 2020 design language. And we're taking a kind of similar approach. So we do have cost declines built into the model as the vehicles age, but they're much more akin to a straight line depreciation cost down, as opposed to this ridiculous double declining balance, which just doesn't hold true in our model. So I hope that answered at least most of the question. Greg, if I forgot, please feel free to ask me anything.
I think you hit on the key ones there. And one other follow-up, couple questions around the financing. How do you think about financing these subscription vehicles and kind of the thought process to date on that?
So yeah, we've been having a number of discussions with our banking partners. We're not going to be doing anything exotic or unique here. It's going to be a traditional OpCo, FinCo type structure. And the automotive financing market is a very, very large and liquid marketplace today that investors understand very well. I don't think most consumers out there realizes that BMW has millions of vehicles on its balance sheet. So this is a marketplace that investors are very familiar with. Now, what makes us a little bit unique is as a young company, and this will be our first product market, we do anticipate that we'll have a lower loan to book value in that initial years, and also slightly higher cost of capital versus the incumbent OEMs. But as our vehicles continue to be on the road and have additional mileage and we can see the performance, we anticipate that we'll be at a loan to book similar to traditional automotive OEM, which is 80 to 90%. This is also an important reason why we wanted to make sure we have a conservative volume ramp up in those initial years, because we will have to use some equity funding to fund that initial batch of vehicles as we're growing the company and launching our products here throughout the United States. But this is a big market, and we've been in discussions with the banking partners and understanding their willingness to be able to support us here.
The only other thing I would add is that in a steady state, our financing is more or less a banker's dream, because not only can we utilize traditional ABL on the value of our vehicle itself, but because it's a subscription model, and we've engaged in some preliminary discussions, it's more or less factoring a receivable or securitization. So we can, let's say, utilize both parts of the capital markets, a traditional kind of debt financing structure, and also the securitization, because we do have a cashless stream associated on a per vehicle basis.
Great. So continuing down, I think a couple on the subscription side, questions around subscription. What prevents Tesla or some other OEM of coming in and creating a competitive subscription offering like Canoo's offering here? And maybe to that point, the audience may not fully know that there are some OEM subscription offerings out there. Maybe you can comment on that as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so there are a few issues that someone like a Tesla or a Rivian would encounter. And obviously they have every right to pursue a subscription model. Just if they do it, it's going to be far less profitable than our model, and it's going to be a worse consumer experience for a few reasons. The first of which is the one you're already seeing today. By co-running a traditional sales and leasing model and subscription, what you have is third-party providers like Fair.com buying your Teslas and then running competing subscription services. So you're essentially competing within your own vehicles if you co-run a sales model. But the bigger issue that they have, and this is something that's very unique to Canoo specifically, is our vehicle was made for membership or subscription specifically. We made a lot of engineering and design choices to make sure our vehicle works for this model. So not only from like a quality standpoint or a durability standpoint, we also have taken some kind of cost considerations on our side, wrapping the vehicle in thermoplastics to make sure our MRO costs are far lower. So if you think about like a Tesla and a subscription, you scratch the wheels like everybody will in the first 3 months. That's $1,000 that Tesla has to pay to replace those nice shiny alloy rims. We basically, they look very nice, but we have a plastic covering on our rims because we know that people will ding and dent them and we will have to replace them. So they're going to have a lot of issues on the MRO side and just having cost inefficiencies by co-running these models. And frankly, there's a lot of other issues that they're going to encounter, but those are probably the two biggest.
Okay, great. Can you also, Alex, while you're on the topic, because again, around subscription, the question around how the charging will work, and maybe what amount of or component of charging is built into the subscription payments?
Yeah, so we will give all of our subscribers a charging credit to EVgo and Electrify America, which I'm sure you know are the two biggest public charging providers in the US. So if I'm a Canoo subscriber, you know, you open up the Canoo app, you will see their entire networks available to you. You'll be able to schedule or just go to one of their chargers directly. And then that will get billed up to, let's call it $15 or $20 a month directly to Canoo. Anything in excess of that will get billed to our subscribers directly. For home charging, we are offering the option to have someone from EVgo, Electrify America come out to your house and install your home charger if you want. But honestly, what you're seeing a lot of now more than ever, especially in the big metro areas that we're launching, are people who don't even need home chargers. Like a lot of our Canoo employees have electric vehicles, and because we have charging stations at work, or because there's so many around Hermosa and Manhattan Beach, that you really don't need, you know, your own charging station.
Great, thank you. There were a couple of questions on brands. How kind of how do you think about the Canoo brand position relative to other products in the market? Can you comment on that as well?
Yeah, so from a branding standpoint, as we want to be clean, so we want to really reflect that we're an electric company that's built for the future. We also think it's important that we're based in California and Los Angeles, and are really the targeted offering towards not just young people and not just millennials, but really anyone who believes that, you know, form over function is important, and someone that believes in, you know, the fact that electric vehicles will likely be the future. But I think it's also important to recognize that every OEM today, like, I really don't like to call them brands. I don't know if anyone's seen a Ford commercial, but it's essentially just a Ford car driving on a road for a minute. That's not what a brand is. And that's because every single OEM besides Tesla has to go through a dealer network. So by us going direct to consumer, we actually own that, let's call it customer touch point, and can build a true brand, having multiple interactions with the customer, real experience centers. Basically what Tesla's done, and Tesla's the only car company that I would say has a real brand today. And that's reflected in the fact that they have repurchase rates that are double or triple where you see GM and BMW at today. So we're hoping to kind of leverage a lot of the branding potential by going direct to consumer as well, you know, as opposed to just building on, you know, the only vehicle offering.
Great, thank you. One question on just general question to Uli and team. Are there any things, there's the timeline page and the original presentation that was put out. Is there anything that keeps you up at night in terms of being able to hit the timeline for startup production? Any commentary around that?
Yeah, as you have seen, we performed as a team introducing our first prototypes in a very consistent way. We hit all our milestones that we scheduled from the beginning. And our assumption is that we are going to continue hitting our milestones in the future as well. The thing what keeps us, or maybe me, awake at night was when we We're in the design phase, in the engineering phase, using lots of simulation tools for pretty much every functionality of the vehicle. And we wanted to see the physical results of physical tests on the road in winter, in summer, and also the physical crash tests, because we have a unique architecture. So we pushed really the driver and the passenger as much forward as possible in the cabin to free up interior space. And this requires a pretty sophisticated crash structure in the skateboard and in the cabin. And this was really a challenge. And after we've seen the results from the physical crash test, as I mentioned, we are very comfortable that our simulation correlates very well with the physical crash tests. And this gives us a little bit more freedom, and we are more relaxed than before. So with that said, so there's nothing that we know today that is extremely critical or extremely risky, since we have the physical crash results in the box today. We feel pretty confident that we will hit our milestones with the next level of prototypes that will be available in September next year.
I would also like to add that this is also why we are so excited about the opportunity to partner with Hennessy and also become a public company. As the transaction is currently proposed today, with those proceeds, we have enough capital to, one, have our manufacturing facility partnership up and running for 50,000 units. And then two, we can finish the development and engineering of our first consumer product for start of production in 2022. And third, we can pull forward our last mile delivery vehicle program with these proceeds. So we have a lot more control in terms of our destiny, that we have the capital secured in place for these programs for us to have our heads down and do a lot of the engineering work and continuing this program. So it really puts our destiny in our own hands by eliminating a lot of this execution risk from a market's perspective.
Great. Thank you. One question, Uli, on the team, and the participant notes that several members of the senior team came out of other EV startups. Can you comment about, how the team came together? And you've already commented, I think, on your confidence in achieving your goals and milestones, but maybe just a bit of history on how you pulled the team together.
Yeah, at the end of 2017, we were actually looking to establish our company and to attract investors, and these investors we attracted are still with us from day one. And what these investors looked at, of course, our business plan and our strategy and which product we bring to the market, but they also said, okay, can you bring a team together of automotive experts and tech experts in a very short time? And based on, I would say, our background and our history and our experience, it was not a problem to attract a team of vehicle experts. And at the beginning, we were just 9 people. And they brought also their friends and, let me say, former colleagues very fast to our company. And we were able to start working on our product and our architecture already from the beginning of 2018. And we were focused on our product. We did not do any, let me say, side projects, and we make quick decisions. And with a team of experts that brings additional experts to the company, we were able to really develop and design and manufacture our vehicles in record time.
I'd also like to add that I think it's important to flag that this is why we're located in California, in Los Angeles, is to have access to this kind of talent. But in addition, our team members have spent their entire careers, or a majority of their careers, in electrification. And over that time, they were able to work with various experts throughout their professional careers, and then build those relationships that they were able to leverage then for us here at Canoe today.
Great, thank you both. couple questions on manufacturing and identification of your manufacturing partner. Can you comment on, one, can you disclose that? And two, where do those, kind of how far along is that manufacturing facility? Can you comment, around that generally?
I can comment, as you said, around that. So we have a contract manufacturer with us from day one. And they were actually helping our engineers designing the vehicle, and they were overseeing our production of our 32 beta prototypes that have been produced in Michigan together with the contract manufacturer. And we actually also used simulation results in the manufacturing, in the physical manufacturing process that have been developed with the contract manufacturer. When it comes to the production sites, we will launch our product in North America. We are looking with the contract manufacturer on sites in the southeast of the US. I cannot disclose the state yet, but we have an LOI signed with them already from 2018. And we are moving forward, and we are very optimistic that we can disclose something more later this year.
Great, thank you. Two questions maybe for Dan. One, several folks are asking about better timing for the transaction close. Can you comment on our best estimate for closing of the merger?
Sure, Greg, thank you. So our plan is to file our proxy statement, or S4, which will provide all the transaction details sometime late August, early September. That would then, we'll file that with the SEC. There'll be an SEC review process, and we'd expect to close in 60 to 90 days thereafter. So right now we're targeting mid-November. So Q4 would be the approximate date of the closing, at which time Canoe will become NASDAQ listed, the ticker will flip, and the company will trade under our new ticker, CNOO.
Great. And then another follow-up, and hitting on the point I think Uli touched on a moment ago, but this listener assumes that Hennessy did a fair amount of diligence. And even though we can't disclose who the contract manufacturer is, the question is, did Hennessy have a chance to speak with the contract manufacturer or any of the other key partners involved here, including potentially Hyundai?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, we had the opportunity to conduct in-depth reviews of over a dozen, I think it was 15 total EVs and advanced mobility companies since the beginning of this year. It's Greg, Nick, and I, and our advisors. So we understand what the critical success factors are. So we did do diligence around the skateboard with Hyundai and spoke to them directly. Company came back, or Hyundai reported that the company was clearly a technologically capable manufacturer, designer, including IP, crash testing. So they were very, very impressed. We also conducted interviews with the charging system, Electrify America as an example. So we know that they're ready to work with the company at the time that we need to have this in place for our subscribers. We focused on sales and service, aftermarket service rather, with folks like Cox Mannheim, and they are very, very capable, and we've ascertained that they're ready to work with the company and excited to work with the company on service after we produce and begin start of production. And then finally, we did have the opportunity to work with the company's designated and talk directly to the company's designated contract manufacturing company. And so they are absolutely on track. And we expect that'll be one of our milestone announcements here between now and the time that we complete the business combination. So it's imminent, it's underway, and those discussions are well along. There won't be any surprises there. There is a manufacturer who's excited to work with the company and has already helped us manufacture our beta vehicles, as we described, will be helping us with the Gamma vehicles as well.
Great, okay. A couple more here before we run out of time. I I think there was a question around, why the lifestyle vehicle first versus delivery vehicle or the sports vehicle. I don't know if someone on the
Yeah,
team can comment on
yeah.
that.
Yeah, the idea is, first of all, to introduce the lifestyle vehicle because it also transports the brand and our company. We want to show that there is an alternative when it comes to designing an electric vehicle. Because today, if you look at all the electric vehicles, they still look very similar to combustion engine driven vehicles. They either are a 3-box design or a 2-box design. They all have a hood and there's no engine under the hood. And we wanted to introduce a vehicle, what we call a post SUV vehicle. So it has all the advantages and flexibility of an SUV, a huge interior space. The driver sits a bit higher, semi-command position. It offers a huge interior space, but in our case, on a relatively small footprint. So every benefits from a large SUV in a smaller package. And as I mentioned before, the interior space of our vehicle is pretty much in line with a large SUV interior space, sitting on a footprint of a compact car. And we wanted to introduce such a product. The other thing is we also wanted to introduce a design language that already points towards the future. So this is why our vehicle is a bit more symmetrical. If you imagine we move from level 2.5 to level 3, level 4 autonomous driving, there's no need for a steering wheel anymore. And our vehicle design is already prepared to actually have the rear seat also in the front, because it will then transform into a loft on wheels or a room on wheels. And this is why we want to establish our brand with a very futuristic and innovative vehicle.
I think also from the practical perspective, it's important to flag that our lifestyle vehicle is the most difficult version of the vehicle to design and engineer, just because it's carrying the heaviest payload. We have to have 7 passengers in there. You have to go through crash and everything. But every new vehicle after the lifestyle vehicle is just going to be that much easier for us to be able to bring to market. And that's why we think we can be better, faster, and smarter in terms of bringing these products out to the marketplace as we continue to move forward and leveraging that one single skateboard that you heard Willie describe earlier.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I just saw a question about, does the lifestyle vehicle have heating and air conditioning? And the answer is yes.
Sure. Yes.
To your point, you just said is, building, ventilation around such an open footprint, is much, much more challenging, right, than other, the other potential vehicles down the line. Comment on, if you can, on the city by city rollout. There was a question we got both online, and then we got an email question before on that, in both the US and China, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so good question. I'll talk about why we went with a city-by-city rollout first. For us, there's 2 primary benefits to utilizing the strategy. The first of which is frankly common sense. If you look at where EVs are sold in the United States today, 80% of that volume is driven by the biggest, or 15 of the biggest metro areas. So it's a low-hanging fruit from a demand side. And the second component is that to launch this subscription model, like Uli and Dan have alluded to, we need a partner ecosystem for MRO, for our charging in these big metro areas. Frankly, they have that ecosystem that we need, and they also will drive the pricing down in these cities because, again, we can leverage economies of scale. For the actual, let's call it rollout strategy, for us, we'll start in 2022 here in our home city of Los Angeles or Orange County, and then we'll slowly expand the latter 2 years, so 2023 and 2024 on the West Coast. So you're talking about San Diego, the broader Bay Area, Portland, Seattle, and then 2024, 2025, we'll start to slowly expand across the rest of the United States, Washington, D.C., Austin, Texas. That's our base case. That being said, and like the question alluded to, are there absolutely upside opportunities for us to expand early into China and Europe? Absolutely, and it's something that we're considering. But right now, our current base case thinking is a U.S. focused rollout here, targeting the big metro areas.
Great. Thank you. Couple questions, a lot of questions actually around ride sharing restrictions. You know, could you in theory subscribe to the lifestyle vehicle and then participate in a ride sharing program?
At the outset, no, it's not likely. We will be imposing some mileage limitations greater than your top of the line lease. So we're talking about excess of 15K miles a year, but not enough for a ride sharing model. Are we thinking about ride sharing? Absolutely. And I believe one of the first questions was actually, you know, what do we plan to do with the vehicles that are 12 to 14 years old? Those, you know, to be honest, I think one of the main use cases for those will be ride sharing. But for our core model, our core membership model, this is a B2C. It's for someone that, you know, uses it on a daily basis for their own personal life. It's not targeting ride sharing to begin with. Utilization issues are very tough in ride sharing, not to mention Fair.com got in a little bit of trouble because they tend to beat up the vehicles quite heavily. So it's something on our monitor. We're exploring it. I would call it an upside opportunity for now.
Right. Okay. And any plans to potentially sell the lifestyle vehicle, or is it only going to be subscription?
So kind of for the reasons I touched on earlier, to really properly run a subscription model and achieve that price equality with a lease, not only do we need to be focused from like just working on our core competencies, but it becomes very difficult launching a sales model. Then we're in double declining balance depreciation, and we got to mark to market on an incorrect basis our residual values for our subscription cars. So no, we are not at this time. Again, if the subscription model doesn't work, you know, we are exploring other options. So these are fair questions, but at the outset, we're very targeted and we're very focused on launching the subscription and then the B2B sales vehicle.
I could say that if subscription, if for some reason it does not work in that first year, we could very easily switch to direct sales. Right. So that's the option right there. So we want to preserve that optionality for as long as we can.
Yeah, great point, Paul.
Great. Just a quick question on the herd. I guess a participant was confused about what the actual core of the car is made of. You know, it's basically they thought it was steel, then they heard other components. Can you just confirm what the frame is made of?
Yes, we are using high strength steel for the skateboard as well as for the body, the cabin. And the leaf springs are composite glass fiber material. And the other thing is to reduce the weight. Our outer skin, all panels of the vehicle outside are made out of plastic, thermoplastic material. No exotic
thermoplastics
material.
on the i3 and the i8 today. It's not anything crazy or revolutionary. It's already on vehicles.
Christy, we still have a lot of questions, but I don't know how we want to handle time here.
Yeah, I think we're gonna unfortunately have to cut it off at this point, simply because we've already run over an hour and this was only scheduled for a certain amount of time. So, you know, maybe we can think about, you know, following up at a later date. But for now, I would like to thank everybody for participating, including the teams from Hennessy and Canoe as well. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right.
Thanks everybody. Thank you for having us, Christy. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thanks everyone. Bye. Thanks, Christy.